Hi, everybody. Welcome to Statistics Solutions webinar on theory, why theory is important. At the end of the webinar today, I'll have a question and answer session where you guys can, pose your questions and I'll try to answer them. If you have any questions as we go along, just hold them till the end. I mean, if you want to type them in the chat box or the question and answer box, just so you don't forget them, that's fine. But we'll just get to them at the end. Also, I thank everybody. Yeah, if you look in the webinar chat box, everybody does get a copy of this webinar, the slides and the recording. It also gives the link to our website where you can schedule time to meet with somebody and have a free consultation. It also has free resources. Let me go ahead and let me take it to the end slide real quick so you just have this now, and I'll also put it up at the end. This is just our information, who we are, and our contact information. So at our website, there's also, we have resources, free resources. So there's things like chapter guidelines and, guidelines that go into what goes into the chapters and what goes into the sections of each chapter. Also blogs on all kinds of topics on the different chapters and just statistics information. So there's all kinds of information and free resources on our website. And this webinar, as well as other webinars, are also archived on the website. All right, and there's the information about us, and we're going to come back to that at the end. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, why is theory important? There we go. Overview, this is what we're going to be looking at today, the categories or sections. All right, theory is an important aspect of the dissertation. For these reasons, these are some of the things that theory does. Provides a framework for understanding. It can help guide your research, it can help promote critical thinking, and it has predictive and interpretive capacity, because data without theory is just data, right? It doesn't say anything unless we bring some kind of interpretive mechanism onto it, right? And theory helps do that. So provides a framework for understanding. Theories help us explain things. That's what theories are developed for. They explain phenomena. They explain things. So theories can help us explain or interpret or make sense of phenomena and data, right? So that's why they're one of the reasons they're important in studies. They provide a way, or a framework, if you want to use that term, way of explaining the connections between ideas. Sometimes this takes the form of relationships between constructs, between factors, between variables you're studying. And usually the theoretical component comes into your study in terms of a theoretical framework, and we'll get to that specifically a little later. But that's why I'm using the term framework here. Theories also help guide your research. So theories guide inquiry by providing a starting point for research questions and hypotheses. So, for example, I apologize for the barking dog, but working at home. Theories can guide your research, right? They can help you develop research questions and hypotheses. So in that way, they can help guide, the focus of your study. Let's take an example. So let's say we wanted to study college student retention. Okay. So you could look at theories of retention to get started, right? To see what kind of theories of retention are out there, to see, what they look at. So for example, one could be engagement theory, right? The theory is that the more students are engaged in their academic environment, in the college environment, the better they do, right? And the better they do, the more they're retained, the more they're likely to stay, right? So that can get you started on, the kind of questions asked about, about engagement, about what they do on campus, about, the services that are offered that keep them linked to the campus community. Theories can also promote critical thinking. So in this way, let's say, theories kind of go out of, I don't want to say out of style, but, they don't always work for everything that they're applied to, right? And sometimes that's what you're doing when you're, like in quantitative studies, and you're measuring a phenomenon, whatever you're looking at, and you're using a theory. And so the theory is going to apply to whatever you're studying. And sometimes theories don't always work to explain what you're looking at, which is fine. That just means the theory may need to be modified, or you may need to use another theory. So it can promote critical thinking in that way, in that it can challenge assumptions and encourage exploration of alternative explanations or alternative theories. So by testing theories, we can develop a deeper understanding of the topic, and maybe, the need to expand on or extend certain theories, or even use a new theory. So theory can promote critical thinking in ways that thinking about needing new theories or expanding old ones. It allows for prediction and interpretation. So theories help us predict the relationship between variables, right? Which is the thing they do. If one construct or variable predicts another one, right? So does engagement predict retention? Okay, so theories help us make those connections, those predictive connections, or if they can tell us if variables are related, right? Which leads us to, hypotheses and expected findings. If two constructs or variables are related, we go to if the theory says, yeah, these things should be related, then that can act as your hypothesis, right? Based on the theory and based on the previous research. So it helps us to kind of explain and interpret the data, right? Because data is dumb, if you want to think about it that way. Dumb in the sense of being moot. Data doesn't have any explanation capacity on its own. That's why we use theories to help us kind of make sense of the data. Okay. For example, if you find a connection between transformational leadership and motivation, let's say, well, you just have the data there, and theory on motivation and theory on transformational leadership, they have certain tenets, they have certain positions, and those positions can help you interpret why those things may be linked. Okay, so let's just, what is theory, right? Let's just start there, because it seems like one of those things that we all hear about and we all kind of know about or think we do. And then when somebody says, hey, what does theory do? Or what does theory mean? Or how does it work in your study? Suddenly it's harder to explain that. So really, theories are just a set of ideas or concepts that help explain a phenomenon, that help explain something, right? And they usually are derived or developed over time through much research, theory development research. So they usually take a lot of time to develop. But yeah, and they explain things, right? In studies, a theory is presented as a framework to help you understand the relationship between variables. What is the theoretical framework in your study? We're going to cover that a little bit later. I keep saying that, but it's another section down here. And like I said in the first section, data is moot or inert without theory. sorry. Okay. Next section. Theory and the research process. Theories are important to the research process because they have guiding and interpretive capacity. We talked about that a little bit in the introduction. Theories can be used to make predictions, explain observations, guide research. Making predictions, we talked a little bit about. Expected findings. If the theory holds certain positions or holds certain tenets, you can base your expected findings on those. Now, whether those will be supported or not is yet to be seen into what your study reveals. But theories are based on premises. They can be used to generate hypotheses based on these premises, like we talked about. If the theory holds something to be accurate or true, then you can base your hypotheses on that theory. It has explanatory power, like I said before. Observations or data without commentary doesn't explain things. So sometimes theory helps us to explain something based on what those theories hold to be accurate or true, and what they predict based on their premises. And part of testing theories is advancing knowledge. I think in some schools, there's a section where you have to talk about significance or advancing knowledge. And theories can help us do that by testing theories, right? We test if a general theory is applicable to a certain population. If your results are significant, then yeah, you can confirm that this theory works for this population. If your findings are not significant, maybe the theory is not applicable to that population or to that whatever you studied specifically, which tells you that it may need to be revised, or that a new theory or different theory may need to be used for what you studied exactly. So it can help us advance knowledge in that way. It can help guide your research too, in the sense that it keeps you focused on what you're doing along with your study's purpose. And helps you avoid like rabbit holes, like what I call associative rabbit holes, where you look at something and go, oh, that's kind of linked to my study, and then you look at something else, yeah, that's linked to my study, and that's linked to my study, and the next thing you know, you're 20 ideas down a different road. So theory, sometimes if you stick with your theory, can help you stay on track. Theory and research questions. Theories can definitely help you define and refine and tweak and develop your research questions by providing that framework for investigation. Let me go over that a little bit here. Yeah, and here we come to the theoretical framework, right? No, we're not there yet. Sorry, we're still apologize. Theory and the research questions. A well-defined research question is crucial to the success of a dissertation. We know that, right? Because research questions are foundational. They're what's guiding your investigation. They're also what your study is based on. They're the cornerstone of your foundation of your study. But research questions are inevitably theoretically informed somewhere. And theory can help to define your research question by providing a framework and identifying the variables for your investigation. So, for example, theories can guide the selection of variables to be studied in the research design. Let's look at an example. So if we're going to look at transformational leadership and motivation, for example, each of those has components that will act as your variables, right? So if we're looking at motivation, right? If there's several theories of motivation, right? So you're going to want to pick one that's as closely aligned to what you're doing as possible. So there's a theory of motivation that talks about external factors and internal factors that motivate people, right? In that case, if you chose that theory of motivation, then you would be looking at measuring external factors and internal factors, because that's what the theory contains. There's different theories of motivation, however. There's a theory of motivation based on expectations. Okay, and basically this is people are motivated based on what they expect to receive. Okay, and this theory of motivation has three components called valence, expectancy, and instrumentality. Now, if you chose that theory for your study, those would be, when you're looking at measuring motivation, those would be the three components: valence, expectancy, and instrumentality. All right. Similar study, right? So you're still studying motivation. One theory contains certain components, another theory contains other components. So that's how the theory can kind of guide your research questions and can guide the specific variables that you're looking at in measuring. And in that way, the theories are also connected to the instruments, right? So if you're going with that first theory of motivation that contains external factors and internal factors, you would use an instrument that is linked to that theory, right? That would measure those factors. If you're using the second theory of motivation that involves expectations, you would use a instrument that is linked to that theory, and that instrument would measure the components of that theory specifically. So you see here, if you use a specific theory for your study, make sure you use the instrument that is linked to that theory. Okay, because again, there's going to be different theories of motivation. There's different theories of emotional intelligence. There's different theories of some of these constructs. And the theories have certain components. So when you're looking for your instrument to use, make sure your theory and your instrument align so that the things that are measured on the instrument align with the components of the theory. Okay. The theoretical framework. Here's what we're talking about: the theoretical framework, and which is the way theory usually comes into your study. Not only guiding it and using it to explain results later on, but the theoretical framework is actually a section in the study. Now you're going to have to use your, consult your school's template, right, for this, because some schools, usually what happens is you mention the theoretical framework in chapter 1, what you're going to use and why, and then in chapter 2 there appears an elaborated a section where you elaborate more on the theory. That's pretty typical. So it appears in 1 and 2. Some schools only have it in 1. Some schools only have it in 2. So again, check your template. But what should the theoretical framework contain, and what is it? Basically, the theoretical framework is your theory, or collection of theories, or collection of ideas that you're using to theoretically guide your study and do those things that we talked about earlier. And the way you handle the theoretical framework is usually talk about who developed the theory. You don't have to go into a lot of history here, but a little bit, not much. Who developed the theory, what year, and what did they develop it for, right? What did they develop it to explain, right? If it's a theory of motivation, then it's developed to explain people's actions, what drives them to act, what motivates them to act, right? Define the theory. This is real important. Define the theory along with any associated components. So like we mentioned, that motivational theory that has internal factors and external factors. You're going to want to define the theory, but you're also going to want to define the components that are associated with the theory. So internal factors, what does that mean? What are they? External factors, what does that mean? So define the theory, excuse me, and any components that it has, because usually they have components. Discuss what other researchers have used the theory for. And sometimes this involves bringing in a study or two to show how other researchers have used the study similar to yours, that it's still, being used and it's still important and vital. And then you want to talk a little bit about how the theory connects to your study, right? How it relates to what you're doing, how it's going to help guide and explain what you're doing. That's the theoretical framework. And it usually takes a fairly specific form like this. So use your template for that. And it's also good to, get an example. If you haven't already, get an example of an approved dissertation from your school close to what you're doing, and see how other people have handled this, or, what it looks like, just so you can see a concrete example. The importance of using relevant theory. A theory must be relevant to what you're studying. Right, because it's sometimes it's difficult. People, you're like, I need to choose a theory. I need to choose a theory. I don't know what theory. And sometimes it's easy to pick the wrong one, or one that doesn't quite work. I mean, there's not really right and wrong. Right and wrong just means the right one is the one that works, okay, and the one that you can make work. And they shouldn't really be afterthoughts. I see this a lot too. People, like, I have everything in my study set up, but I don't know what theory I'm going to use. Usually, like I was talking about with the research questions, they should your theory should be a consideration as you start to develop your study. So in other words, I'm going to study engagement, student college engagement. Well, go look, obviously you're going to want to get your, your population, where you're going to get your sample people you're going to survey, and those things, your study setting, all important, but also start looking at your theory, start looking at engagement theories. This theory contains these components. This theory contains these other components. Well, which theory aligns best with what you're studying? So don't let the theory be an afterthought. Try to kind of build it into how you develop your study. Parts of the development of your research problem and your research questions, right, which is what I was just kind of talking about. So let's look at an example. And I kind of already gave this example, but I'm going to work it out a little bit more. This is about the motivation theory, but so it's going to kind of build on the example we had earlier. If you want to study employee motivation, let's say, it's really been researched a lot, right, in management and organizational psychology. There are, two theories. There are more than two theories. Well, let's just take two, for example. The two theories we looked at earlier of motivation. One contains external factors, one contains internal factors. If those are the things you want to look at, right, in employee motivation, how people are motivated by intrinsic factors, which are things like internal satisfaction, right? And if they're motivated by external factors, which are things like pay raises and bonuses, right? Then you would want to go with that theory of motivation that contains those items. If there's the other theory of motivation that we talked about, and there's more than that, which is based on what people expect to receive from doing something, from being motivated to do something. And that theory contains valence, expectancy, and instrumentality, which are very specific. If those are the kinds of things you would want to look at, and measure, then you would use that theory of motivation. Now, there are other theories of motivation. One of those might not work. You could look for yet a third or a fourth one to see what they specifically measure, to see if that's what you're looking at. You want, aligns with what you want to look at for in your study. So that's how they can become part of your research questions and your research problem, right? That you're kind of thinking about the theory that you're going to use and what you're going to be measuring all at the same time as you kind of develop and start to put the parts together for your study. Okay, and we're at the end. Theory is an essential component of the dissertation. Just to recap here, it helps generate hypotheses, guide your research, interpret data, especially in chapter 5, when you get your results, because part of what you need to do is interpret your results and discuss your results. And part of that is discussing your results in relation to previous research, right? Seeing if your findings can support or don't support or show something entirely different than previous research. But also, your theory can help too here. Your theory can help you interpret your data and discuss your data, right? So you have your data. What does the theory say? What does the theory, hold that's important? How does it relate to what you found? Does it align with do your findings align with the theory? Do they not align with the theory? Okay, and that's part of kind of testing the theory, to see if it's applicable to what you studied, to your population. And again, if your findings don't kind of align with the theory or don't support the theory, that's fine. Sometimes people get really kind of crestfallen and oh, I didn't find significance, or it says something different than the theory. That's fine, because as a researcher, you go in unbiased, and that still tells us something, right? If your results, your findings don't align with the theory or support the theory, that tells us that maybe the theory is not applicable here, in a certain situation, or on a certain population. Maybe the theory needs to be revised. Maybe there needs to be another theory is more suitable for studying what you studied. So it still tells us something, even if your findings don't align with the theory. So theory has a kind of explanatory and interpretive capacity that can come into play in chapter 5. And using a relevant theory is crucial. Right. So remember what we talked about, that, theories have these components that sometimes correspond with the very, variables that you're studying. So you wouldn't want to pick a theory that has different components than the components you plan on measuring, right? So like those two theories of motivation, you wouldn't pick one to study the other one's components. So make sure, what you're studying, the variables you're studying, the components, they align with the theory. Okay. And that's it. Do we have any questions? You can just type your questions in the question and answer box, or even the chat box. Okay, if you have questions, I'll give you a minute. But again, this is who we are. We're a full service dissertation consulting company. We do everything from statistics to editing, everything in between. Most of the work we do is to consult with you, edit, guide, to get your, whatever you're working on, if it's chapter or if it's all the chapters, to get everything in shape to submit. And once you submit, we support you in addressing comments. Our website too, if you just want to, look around our website, it has resources. It has guidelines for chapters, guidelines for sections within the chapters. We also have blogs. We have a lot of blogs on all different kinds of topics. The webinars are archived. So we have webinars on all kinds of different topics and different chapters. And this is our contact information. So, and the consultation is free, of course, no obligation if you just wanted to see what we provide. Okay, can you share the presentation via email? I joined late. Yeah, everybody's going to get a copy. If you look in the webinar chat box, everybody's going to get a copy of that in their email. So, yeah. Any other questions? All right, everybody. Thank you for attending. Have a great day. And we do other webinars all the time. So check our webinar schedule, you know, different chapters, different components of the dissertation. So thank you. All right, everybody take care.